Hey now, happy Wednesday afternoon. Welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brenton Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. 3 full hours of sports talk today and plenty to get to between now and 6 o'clock. Brady Singer throwing a gem last night. That was one of his best outings of the year. Good for Brady. Royals still lost. That sucks. We'll get to last night's game and the unfortunate part about what was a gem for Brady Singer. Also, I came across a piece today from The Guardian, which mostly covers English and European news, but has a U.S. arm too, and apparently like one U.S. sports writer. And they wrote about Jordan Lyles this week, and it's really mean. It's just completely unnecessary. We'll get to this a little bit after we recap last night's game. The headline of the piece is just how Jordan Lyles made a $50 million career out of the art of losing. You didn't need to. You didn't need to do that.
That's that ether that make your soul burn slow.
Yeah.
Like, not necessary.
Like, if you're Jordan Lyles, you got to see that and think, man, why? I was enjoying my day.
There's a little more nuance when you get into the article, but still, a lot of people don't get past the headline.
No, not at all. Yeah, very sad. For Jordan Lyles. But then again, he's made a $50 million career out of it, I guess. So we'll get to the Royals here in just a minute. We'll also preview game 2 of the series tonight. Austin Cox getting the start. Love to see that. It'll be Logan Allen on the mound for the Guardians coming up this evening at 7:10. We'll also, later this hour, play our weekly round of one gotta go. And another piece from ESPN about the NFL offseason for all 32 teams. Who is making noise at offseason workouts for the Kansas City Chiefs? It's a UDFA that we have talked about plenty on this program, so we'll get into that a little bit later on this hour. Travis Kelce was featured in Vanity Fair this week. Yeah, number 1 Vanity Fair program in the greater Topeka metropolitan area. It's a fascinating interview with Kelce. He's an interesting guy.
Very in-depth profile. Like, I kept being shocked at the length, the depth of what was being reported and what Travis Kelce is willing to talk about in this profile. Believe it is free to read online. I mean, I read it, and don't know if you believe this, but I'm not a Vanity Fair subscriber.
I'm shocked by that.
I don't currently subscribe to any magazines, actually. I mean, I used to have Sports Illustrated, ESPN the magazine. I'm not currently a magazine subscriber, so I don't have a Vanity Fair subscription, but I still read the article, so it's probably free for you to read as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about what Travis Kelce had to say, particularly vis-a-vis the money he's making or maybe not making over the course of his NFL career. Had some really interesting, thought-provoking things to say we're going to get to later on.
Yep, so we will talk about that coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. Also have, of course, What Is Wrong With You? It's a Wednesday. That means Tim Fitzgerald is going to stop by. Big day of 580 Sports Talk headlines. And we're going to talk a little bit about Shohei Ohtani. Dan's going to talk about Shohei Ohtani, I should say, in the 5 o'clock hour. He did it again last night. He had 2 home runs and struck out 10. I was seeing on Twitter people trying to put this in terms of another sport. And I saw multiple people try to make a Patrick Mahomes comparison. And they were like, well, imagine if he threw for 300 yards and 4 touchdown passes and also had 2 pick sixes. That's essentially what this is for Shohei Ohtani. I mean, we're legitimately in greatest of all time territory. It's incredible. Every single night is something new.
He leads baseball in strikeouts per 9 innings, or at least the American League, at least, and also in home runs and runs driven in. Like, it's the same player.
Can you believe that when he came over, people were like, yeah, he's going to hit at a little league level. Like, he can't hit major league pitching.
I'll admit to some skepticism because it hadn't been done.
Yeah, I think skepticism is totally fine. But who was it? I don't know if it was from Bleacher Report or somewhere, quoted some anonymous major league front office person who said they thought he was going to hit at a high school level in the majors. Nah, man, he's the best thing we've ever seen.
He's the best thing going in sports, like, period.
Yeah.
Like, the best sports thing we've got. We don't like, we're a month out of training camp. We're 2 weeks out of Big 12 football media days. Like, we got baseball right now. And even if you don't like all the baseball we got going on right now, you got to find a way to keep your eye on number 17 for the Los Angeles Angels.
He is just Utterly unbelievable. So we'll get to all that over the course of the show today. Would love for you to join in and be a part of the program. 785-272-9429 is our text line number. And you can also hop in on YouTube, the YouTube live stream, all fired up, ready for you today to come check us out. Video streaming throughout our 3 hours today. YouTube comment section's open. Just head to youtube.com, search Sports on 580. That's the name of our channel. Subscribe and check us out streaming throughout the show on YouTube. We've got a comment already, in fact, from Christopher on YouTube, who says, it was astounding how many people were actually mad at Scott Barlow last night. It's as if Singer's 6 great innings and the 2 goddamn offensive hits did not exist. Barlow has about 8 more minutes with the team.
I mean, on the one hand, that's the life you sign up for if you are a relief pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to walk the tightrope every single night. And if you don't, then, yeah, you're going to get hammered. The Royals were 3 outs from a rare victory, and Scott Barlow didn't get them. So, like, I understand the frustration. It was even though it was a ground ball, it was a pretty hard hit ground ball off the bat of the former Kansas State Wildcat, Will Brennan, that snuck down the right field line and drove in both the runs Cleveland needed in their 2-1 victory. But I mean, that's life as a relief pitcher, man. You sign up for a life where perfection, where zeros are the standard. And that's a difficult standard to meet. But to the point about Barlow, and we'll get to Singer, because I think that longer term for the Royals, there's more value in discussing what we got from Brady Singer last night. But in the short term, every bad Scott Barlow outing feels like, I don't know, do they have a game? Am I making this up? Do they have a game on The Price is Right where, like, they just, like, take things away from you? Like, take away prizes? Or...
I was going to say, like, your shoes, your shirt?
No.
Like, what are they taking away?
Give me that name tag. Come up on that name tag. You don't get to keep
Yeah,
it.
we're just going to get, like, you have to give things back to Drew Carey when you don't get the game, winning prize.
Like, if you get something wrong, like it reduces the size of the prize or whatever it is. Like, what am I thinking of? Is that a real thing?
I think you're barking up the right tree. It's been a long time since I've watched, but I believe there's
been a long time since I was sick and stayed home from school. So you're not a frequent Price is Right watcher these
Multiple
days.
Generations of Americans have the exact same memory.
But that's sort of what it feels like every time Scott Barlow gives up a run. Like the imagined or assumed return in a trade for Scott Barlow diminishes every time he does something like he did last night. So I think that's where, more than the loss, because again, we're past the point where it stings to lose baseball games for the Royals. It's just their natural state of being is losing baseball games at this point. What stings about Barlow coughing that game up last night is that it feels like, oh man, this diminishes his trade value and we're going to get less in return for Scott Barlow because the most recent thing we saw him do is blow this lead. I think that's where, Christopher, you see the frustration vented at Barlow coming from.
And I think for me too, the thing that just stands out more so is the fact that, he's only got a matter of, a handful of games left in all likelihood with this team because, you're at a point where you're the Royals and I know I'm way oversimplifying how trades work. I totally get that. But, if one bad outing is the difference between getting a better package or a slightly less good package, well then, dang, you just want everything to look as good as possible so that shiny object on the front of the shelf when you first walk into the store is as attractive as possible. So I understand both the desire to see the perfection because, hey, we'd love to get a system's top 10 prospect for this guy. We'd love to get, I don't know, throw out any random team. We would love to get the Rays number 9 prospect or something for this guy. Whereas if he slumps a little bit over the next few weeks, we're getting like a top 15 prospect. You know what I mean? But at the same time, being reasonable about it, I think, is also entirely fair. It was great to see Chapman have a shutdown inning.
Yeah, Chapman did his thing. He continues to grow his trade value, if that's any kind of consolation. And I still think that packaging the two of them together might be the prudent course of action for JJ Piccolo. To offer them both together, you'd get a little bit more in return than I think you'd get for one of those guys to two different teams. The thing about Barlow, though, and it's the thing that I've always sort of been concerned about with him, and I don't know if the numbers bear this out. I've actually never looked. But anecdotally, it's because he's a slider-heavy right-hander. I always worry about him against left-handed hitters. And Will Brennan, who got him last night, is a lefty. But I always worry about him as a reliever, a right-handed reliever, sort of similarly to Brady Singer, in fact, where you've got the slider. It's a real weapon against right-handers, but what have you got for the lefties? And boy, oh boy, are the platoon splits worse than I imagine.
Oh,
He
dear.
is massacring right-handers this year. Right-handers are OPSing 386 against Scott Barlow. He's held them to 7 for 55, no home runs. Left-handers are tattooing Scott Barlow. Left-handers hit like prime, like Ted Williams against Scott Barlow. A 333 average, an OPS over 1. All three of his home runs allowed. 17 to 51 with 3 home runs. And only 14 strikeouts and 51 at bats compared to 26 strikeouts of right-handers and 55 at bats. Now, a smart team would look at that and say, okay, we got to pick our spots with this guy, but he can absolutely carve his way through right-handed heavy lineup. Like if I'm in the American League East and I'm trying to hold off the Yankees had a bunch of right-handers on that team. Like Judge when he's healthy, Stanton, LeMahieu. They're very right-handed heavy. I know they got Rizzo, but like Gleyber Torres is right-handed. Like you're thinking, man, I set up Scott Barlow for success, carve through some of these right-handers on the Yankees. So I think that there's still a lot of value for Scott Barlow, even if probably looking at his numbers, you don't see a guy who's going to come in and, he's going to be we're going to give him the 9th inning when we get him. And if there's a team out there who thinks he's going to get the 9th inning for them, then they might be willing to part with more in return in a trade. But I think the numbers suggest that Barlow is better used in spots, certainly can work in high leverage, has that experience. You're not afraid of using him in the 9th inning. But if it's a run of 3 out of 4 batters in an inning are going to be left-handed, maybe that's not the spot for him.
I think that's fair. Although looking at his full career, like last season, all right, let me give you the overall point first. I think this feels like more of a bad year against lefties than a bad career against lefties. Like last season, I'm looking at his splits against lefties. OPS allowed was under 600 last year. 599 OPS last season. 211 batting average, under a 275 on base. Slug was just 325. He was really good against lefties. And for his career, he's been better against right-handers, but OPS allowed just 737 against lefties. That's not dominant by any means. That's effectively what Seiya Suzuki is this year.
Right. And there have been a lot of good, like effective right-handed relievers over the course of time who have had similar, like, okay, a lefty might get you, and a lefty heavy lineup might be a tough matchup, but they can make it work. They can navigate through it. Like I think about Houston Street being a great example of that. A guy who left-handers always got a really good look at because of his delivery, but was still one of the most effective closers in baseball for a decade because he wiped out righties. And that's what Barlow is doing this year. Even though his fastball has lost a tick of average, it's almost down 2 ticks from 2 years ago. He was averaging 95 with the fastball a couple of years back. He's averaging closer to 93 now with the fastball. But he has enough ability to dominate right-handers that you can live with the odd struggle against left-handers. It's just unfortunate last night, and particularly against his Cleveland team, which is very lefty-heavy, as we talked about. A lot of lefties and switch hitters. That's a matchup that could potentially burn Barlow, and last night it did.
Mark does ask on YouTube who gets traded first between the two relievers, Barlow or Chapman. I think it all just comes down to fit. Like, if there was a great offer for just Chapman or just Barlow or the two of them together on the table right now, it would behoove the Royals to make that move. I mean, there's really no benefit in running those guys out there one too many times where, God forbid there's an injury or he, suddenly hits a slump or whatever. The value is peaking right now. And especially because, as we've talked about before, an acquiring team would get them for longer. So I think it's all about fit. I don't know if it's necessarily, we have to offload one, then we can offload the other. I think it simply comes down to who is going to offer us the right package for either one of them sooner, and then we'll offload them from there. We should talk about Brady Singer because he was awesome last night. 6 innings, 4 hits, no runs allowed, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. I don't really feel like it's almost appropriate to critique too much because that was, 4 hits in 6 innings. only walked 2. That's not too bad. No runs allowed. A great outing for Singer. The starting pitching has been reasonably good as of late. But apparently the Royals are just never going to strike anyone out ever again. But if that's what it takes to not give up runs and to limit traffic on the bases, I am going to take that trade-off. So great to see last night. Very exciting last night.
And it's like I talked about yesterday,
Mhm.
right? Where this is a Cleveland lineup. They don't strike out.
Right.
The fewest strikeouts by hitters in the American League. So what you have to do against this team that makes a lot of contact is you have to induce weak contact. And Brady Singer had a good sinker last night. And the way you tell he had a good sinker last night, he had 12 ground balls. 12 ground balls in 6 innings. And that is the kind of outing for Singer that I thought he was capable of against this lineup if he located the sinker really well. So I was pleased with that. I thought that was a step forward for Brady Singer last night. Pitched out of some jams, and you mentioned not a lot of strikeouts, but he got a big one in a big spot with 2 on and 2 out in the 6th. The last batter he faced in the game. He rung up Josh Bell and got him looking for his 3rd strikeout of the night. That is the kind of stuff that we were seeing from, because when Singer, you go all the way back to when he was drafted, talk about his confidence, his competitive mentality on the mound.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was a return to that, I thought, in a way. We haven't seen a ton of that this year from Brady Singer. We've seen him get beat in big spots. We've seen innings snowball on him. We've seen him unable to avoid the big hit or the crooked number inning. For him in a tied ball game in the 6th inning, and maybe knowing that's going to be the last hitter he faced, to get the punch out to end the inning and end his outing, I thought that was big time. I thought that showed that that competitiveness in Brady Singer has not been extinguished, even as he has fought some confidence and fought some command this season.
The only thing about this is it just continues the frustration I've complained about for so long that, okay, well, where is the proof that this is going to happen next time? Or it can happen for his next 3 or 4 or 5 outings, or any number of times in those outings. And I don't mean to continue to beat the dead horse. I would love to at some point get some sort of consistency, but I'm kind of beyond a place where I'm thinking, okay, yeah, it's going to come. So good to see last night. Glad the Royals were competitive. Bummer of a way to end it, but the wins and losses at this point are sort of a moot point. Game 2 of the series coming up tonight. Austin Cox, again, going to get the start for the Royals. Very excited for that. I wanted really quickly, before we get to our first break here, to get to a couple of Royals pitchers who have sort of been thrown under the bus, either by outside sources or by some friendly fire today. One, Brad Keller today began his rehab start. That's nice. That's cool. Was pitching for the Storm Chasers up in Omaha, and it didn't go all that well. Nope. 1/3 of an inning, no hits, 2 runs. If you're going to score 2 earned runs with no hits, you can probably guess what happened.
Brad Keller threw 20 pitches and missed the strike zone with 16 of those 20 pitches. It might be time to invoke the dreaded Steve Blass when talking about what's going on with Brad Keller. I don't go there lightly.
Yeah.
But that you remember last time we saw him on a mound, he walked 8 guys in 3 2/3.
Yep.
And not missing close either, all over the place. And to have some time away, clear his head, get his shoulder right, and then to go back out on the mound and do that suggests to me that this is not physical for Brad Keller.
Yeah.
And that's a scary proposition that's his living. Again, we sometimes we don't talk about this on the human level, but I think in a case like this, I think it's appropriate to kind of look at it from that prism, that right now Brad Keller cannot do the thing A, he is paid to do, the B, that he has been able to do on command pretty much his entire life. And there are a few things scarier than that. Yeah,
and I mean, you look just at his numbers, and he's never been great at commanding the strike zone, but it's never been like this. I mean, last season, 3.7 walks per 9. Not great. The year before, 4.3, pretty bad. But then the COVID year, he was pretty good, under 3, hovering around 3 or a little under 4 his first 2 years of his career. I mean, again, he's never had great command of the zone. It's not, he can't paint the corners, so to speak. There's not a lot of Greg Maddux in his game.
Right, but like Greg Maddux is a Hall of Famer. He's one of one. Like he didn't have issues with command or control that felt like out of the ordinary or out of whack with anybody else.
It was playable, though. Like, you could live with it. You can't live with 8.3 walks per 9.
No,
you can't.
No.
And
4 strikes every 20 pitches. No, that's, man, it.
The Storm Chasers didn't have to tweet that, though. Like, they tweeted out his line and then a line break and then 20 pitches, 4 strikes. Look, you want to put the first part because people are interested. I get it. You did not have to publicize.
It's public information. Like, somebody, I'm sure, like Ann Rogers or David Lesky, friend of Mic'd Up, or somebody would have gone box score hunting and found, oh my gosh, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn today, and tweeted that information. It felt a little
personal,
unnecessary for at Storm Chasers or whatever they are to go there with the stat line.
Yeah,
that's tough. And man, I just hopeful that Brad Keller can get whatever needs to be right. And that might be a ways away, but clearly. I shouldn't say clearly. I shouldn't say things with 100% certainty here, but it's starting to feel like it is not physical. There was hope maybe that he went on the injured list after his last start, some hope that it might have been physical, and it doesn't seem like it's primarily physical. Let's say that.
Christopher on YouTube says he almost had a Miguel Asensio.
That is a callback. That is a true Royals sicko callback right there.
16 straight balls to start a game.
To start his career.
Yeah. Oh, my God. You want to talk about feeling bad for someone. Also, I mentioned this earlier, and Dan and I were talking about it a little bit. The Guardian and author Hunter Felt had a story today titled How Jordan Lyles Made a $50 Million Career Out of the Art of Losing. Again, you didn't have to write this, man. There's a lot going on in Major League Baseball right now. The Royals are not exactly the most popular team in the sport. You didn't have to do Jordan Lyles like this.
There's a lot of sentences that are mean in this article. The meanest one is this. He, referring to Jordan Lyles, is almost a human symbol of a doomed MLB season.
Yikes.
He's never played a full season for a winning team.
I mean, yeah, it's not great.
Lyles is a veteran of the purposely terrible 2013 Houston Astros, so the Royals aren't even the most hapless rebuilding team he will end up playing on.
Is that true? Were the 2013 Astros more hapless than the current Royals?
They were pretty bad.
They went 51 and 111.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I do not remember the name Bo Porter at all. Their manager.
No, he's on MLB Network now.
That name is completely foreign to me. I did not know this was a real person.
They hired him because they needed somebody to be an adult in the room while they lost 111 games. That was what he was brought to Houston to do.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense. And then he made it through not quite all of the next season. 138 games of the next season before he got canned.
I do think it was meant to have like a nice ending to it, but again, it's a little bit backhanded. Innings pitched is not a sexy stat, but it's an oddly relatable one. Most of us will never know what it's like to throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, which Jordan Lyles does know. Like, he throws that hard, or he used to anyway, or launch a home run into McCovey Cove. In comparison, Lyles' skill set feels more down to earth, even if he is a far superior athlete than 99.999% of the population. Innings pitch is a metric for those of us who believe the old axiom that 90% of anything is just showing up. Lyles has managed to put together a respectable and lucrative MLB career by just being available and willing to put in a full day's effort. You know who else that describes? Me!
Yeah, I don't know, man. That does, like, I see what you're saying, and I understand why that's supposed to be, like, a little bit of a silver lining.
Like
I don't
a pat
know.
on the back?
Yeah, it's just kind of a downer. Like, most of life is just getting by. I don't think the average person loves to think about that when they get up in the morning.
No.
Yeah, so Brad Keller, Jordan Lyles, different reasons the two of them got thrown under the bus today. We'll preview tonight's contest coming up in just a little bit. Royals versus Guardians, Game 2 tonight at 7:10. We'll have pregame at 6:30 on the Royals Radio Network and a little overtime at the top of the 6 o'clock hour. Right now, though, we have to get to our first commercial break of the day. When we come back on the other side of this timeout, we'll play some One Gotta Go. That's coming up on 580 Sports Talk.
$200.
Well, gotta go.
Every time I hear that clip, it is funnier than the last. It's One Gotta Go, our Wednesday 3:20 staple. Well, 3:34 today. Time is a social construct. Here on 580 Sports Talk. Can't quite give up the hoops talk yet. I know we're getting closer to college football season. We just got our Phil Steele magazines today.
Yeah, we did.
The holy grail.
The book the experts cannot do without.
It is incredible. I love the page at the beginning where he straight up says, if you pay attention to grammar, do not keep reading. Because it has to fit a lot of words in a very small amount of space.
There are a lot of things I love about the Phil Steele magazine. Available now at the Topeka Barnes & Noble.
Yes.
That's where you found it?
Yes.
Right
across the parking lot from the Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
For those who are in the know.
So there are a lot of things to love about it, but I think my favorite thing about it is that he uses 2 full pages to show who follows him on Twitter.
So funny. So funny. And some of them, like, okay, yeah, the Lockheed Martin Bowl follows you. Like, awesome.
Yeah. Hey, they don't follow me, but they follow him. True. Yeah, they know he's got the information.
Good to know that KU coach Lance Leipold follows him. I did find him in there today. There was a year where we were looking through and it was like Madonna or like some singer, Cyndi Lauper. I don't know. Somebody was following him. Why? Why in the world is this a thing? All right. My one got to go for you, though. College basketball today. And I've gone through a couple different variations of this question. I wanted to do Big 12 basketball transfers. And originally I had both Hunter Dickinson and Tyler Perry included. I'm going to take them out. I'm going to go with different Big 12 transfers. So I'm going to give you Jesse Edwards at West Virginia, LJ Cryer at Houston. They're in the Big 12 now. Max Asmus at Texas and Ernest Uday Jr. at TCU. One of those transfers has to go.
Run through one more time.
Jesse Edwards at West Virginia.
Uh-huh.
LJ Cryer at Houston.
Yeah.
Max Asmus at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Ernest Uday at TCU.
And one of those...
One's got to go.
So am I talking about short-term impact, long-term impact?
Yeah, for this upcoming season. I think all of them have no more than 2 years left.
For this upcoming season. Man, that's tough.
It's insane how much talent the Big 12 has at. Well, some of this is just kind of moving pieces around because Uday was already in the Big 12, as was Cryer, but still.
Like, I think you can make an argument that any one of those has to go. Like, I think Jesse Edwards might on paper be like the least impressive player. Ernest Uday, I think, is the least experienced and maybe the iffiest as to how much he's going to statistically contribute, but he's also a great fit because TCU needed a big man. Asmus is the only one who hasn't played Power 5 college basketball, so you could argue him. I'm on record as being a big LJ Cryer fan.
Yeah.
It is very hard to set one of those guys apart. I think, I guess I'd say Edwards at West Virginia. I'm probably the least familiar with his game.
Okay.
But I also really like the games of the other three. Like, I really like what they're going to bring. Cryer to Cincinnati and Asmus to Texas, and certainly Uday to a TCU team that they were probably a big man away from the Final Four last year.
Yeah, they had a real chance.
If they'd have had a legitimate 5, I think they may have made a Final Four run because they were certainly good enough in the backcourt and good enough within their system. So I'll say Jesse Edwards has to go, but that's very difficult. I think you could argue that any of the others could go as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know the ACC was down last year, but he did average 14.5 points and almost 10.5 rebounds a game. Like, he's a darn good player. 6'11". Not the world's most efficient scorer as a big man. Shot only 59% from the floor last year, so not overwhelming. Decent free throw shooter. I think I'm going to go with Asmus only because he has not played at this level. Like, if he had transferred in even from like a school in the American, I would say yes, I'm going to keep him around. I think it is just the fact that he's the only one who has not played at the high major or upper mid-major level. And I know he's still good. He's still got All-American recognition, multiple seasons of it. It's not like he was a flash-in-the-pan player just this past year. I mean, he was great in the tournament run back in 2021. Obviously was incredible this past year. Was great in the year in the middle there, too, in 21, 22. I just think that I'm going to trust the guys who have been at this level longer a little bit more. I mean, I love Asmus's game. And if you told me he's going to end up being first team all Big 12 this year, I'd say, no, I get it. Like, yeah, he could probably score 20 a game with that jumper and with that quickness. But I'll trust the guys who have been at this level a little bit more. I do think Cryer's a stud, though. I think you probably have limitations in terms of, like, what new you're getting from him going forward. But if you don't get anything new, he's still a damn good player.
He's one of the 2 or 3 best 3-point shooters in the entire league.
I think at one point last season, he was number 1 in the Big 12.
There are some guys that you watch and every time they put it up, you think it's going in. And he's been one of those guys.
Yeah.
His whole Baylor career.
Terrifying to leave open.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Like, if you were going to go through last year's Big 12, how many guys were you genuinely scared to leave open?
Last year?
Yeah. Cryer and Dick?
Cryer, Dick, I would say Stevenson. Even though I don't think he was an elite shooter, he also felt like when the chips were down, he never missed.
Yeah. He also was not ever scared to take a shot.
No.
Any shot.
And let that be the last time we ever have to talk about Eric Stevenson in this program.
Thank God.
Unless we're breaking down the Belgian Super League of basketball or wherever he's going to end up.
Did he sign with a team?
I have no idea.
I
don't believe he is signed with an NBA team. I feel like I would have heard about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so.
He's got like 6 different alumni teams he could represent in the basketball tournament.
Oh, he's going to be a TBT superstar.
Yeah, he is.
He is absolutely going to be in that event every year. And he could play for South Carolina, Washington, West Virginia, Wichita State.
Yeah.
Although,
I don't think they'd let him play for Wichita State.
I don't think he ended on the best terms with those dudes.
Yeah.
So maybe not.
Get ready to learn Chinese, buddy. My one gotta go today has to do with home improvement. My wife and I are finishing up. That home improvement. Yeah, Zachary Ty Bryan. He definitely got to go.
Yeah.
Rough profile in the Hollywood Reporter about old ZTB, Pride of Aurora, Colorado. No, we're talking about home improvement projects here, and would love the listeners to weigh in on this one, whether on the YouTube comments or the text line, 785-272-9429. My wife and I are wrapping up a bathroom remodel. We just remodeled the bathroom. We are putting the finishing touches on it. If the drain in the shower holds, it is done. Like it is,
all right.
It is as simple as either it is done or we just have to make a small tweak to it and then it will be done. But we are on the precipice of completing the bathroom remodel. So I have 4 home improvement projects. And if you had a budget to do 3 of these, which is the one that you would forego?
Okay.
The shower bath remodel, a finished basement, a landscaping project, or the open kitchen.
All right. The finished basement, all about it. I grew up with a finished basement. It was nice. Big fan of that. Great, like, TV room set up with the finished basement.
That's where mine are in our finished basement. It is wonderful.
Yeah, that stays. Having a house would be nice. I don't mind yard work. I don't mind working outside. So I could get down with some landscaping. I could do that. A lot of trimmed hedges when I was a kid. That was always one of my things, trim the hedges. So I can live with that. And what was the last one?
The open kitchen.
The open kitchen. Yeah, I think I'm dumping the open kitchen. Because the shower, like I could, shower remodel, whatever. I mean, take it or leave it. I'm kind of against the open. So much of the home and work world has become this like open concept. Like, oh, come work for us. We have an open office space. No, leave me alone. Like, I'm fine having a cubicle here. Like in our office, we have space. You, Fulton, and I, we sit in like a triangle, essentially.
Yeah.
And if we want to talk, boom, turn around. I can talk to the two of you. If I don't, I can be closed off because we have walls between our computers. I don't need open. Same at home. Like maybe while I'm cooking, I want to put my head down and be hidden by something, or maybe my wife wants to be hidden by something. And I don't need to have every smell and every sight be in my face all the time.
See, the nice thing about an open kitchen is that you are able to like keep an eye on the other room, and it does feel a little more open. I understand your argument against it, but I do like the open kitchen. We have something like that at our house. The only thing we have not done is a big landscaping project. So that's the one that's got to go for me because I'll just, kind of take that as it comes. Like I don't need to like put in sprinklers or resod everything. Lawns are immoral anyway. I'm trying to talk my wife into just saying, you know what? Let's just turn our backyard into a wildlife preserve. We have an HOA to answer to. It'll be fine. It will not be fine. And I will lose that battle and probably right before I go out and mow the lawn. But lawns are immoral anyhow.
I've heard that argument. My wife's parents did no mow May this year.
Yes, I could not talk Abby into that.
I see, like, I don't mind mowing the lawn or trimming the hedges or weed whacking or whatever. Like, I'll do that.
No, it's not bad. Like, I complain about mowing, and then, like, mowing is kind of peaceful. Like, I used to mow, we had a big lawn when I was a kid, and I used to mow it. We had great backyard, great front yard. But I would say I would like to improve the inside space before I would worry about the outside space. That's fair.
Although I will say I get snooty about people with unmowed lawns. I make snide comments about them. I'm sorry. I try not to be judgmental. I am.
We keep ours mowed.
That's good enough. That's good enough for me.
We keep ours mowed. We have one vote for the bathroom remodel from the 785 on the text line being the one that has to go. I'm gonna tell you this, man. I might have thought the same thing before we started doing this, and right now you have no idea how excited I am to use this new shower.
The new shower is.
It is going. Yeah, it's going to be like life altering.
I would just take a new shower head at this point. Ours sprays.
Ooh.
Oh yeah,
that is not an investment that you would be sad you made.
No.
Let me tell you right now.
Yeah, that's definitely true. We've got to get to a quick break. On the other side of this timeout, who has been impressing the most through the Chiefs offseason so far. It's a name we've talked about plenty on this program. We'll tell you who ESPN says next on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Jim.
Few minutes of this opening hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. No full show tomorrow, by the way. We're going to have a late start due to an afternoon Royals game. 1:10 first pitch tomorrow against the Guardians. We'll preview tonight's Royals-Guardians game coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. I saw this from ESPN, though, earlier this week. Earlier this week, last night, same difference. Every ESPN NFL beat writer put together a little blurb about who is making the most noise at team minicamp, OTAs, rookie camp, etc. for every team in the league. And for the Chiefs, Adam Teicher, friend of the program, ESPN beat writer for Kansas City, said that it is rookie running back Deneric Prince, who has come up many times in the show. He writes that Prince, a rookie UDFA, took advantage of a thin running back depth chart and stood out as a receiver during offseason practice, making several difficult catches. With Isaiah Pacheco recovering from offseason surgery, Prince has a chance to claim not only a roster spot, but some playing time if he shows an aptitude for pass protection at training camp. So there's a couple things that pop up here. We've already heard, and I think it was Matt Derrick who told us this, that he is in line right now to get kick return snaps, that he's going to be either kick or punt return in some capacity, that as long as he's not completely incompetent at it, that's essentially his job to lose. Okay, good to know. So he's going to be around regardless. We know he's fast. You gave us the stats right after he signed about his incredible speed relative to the rest of the class.
Top speed score in the entire draft eligible class of 2023, which Isaiah Pacheco had the top speed score of the eligible draft class of 22. So clearly Chiefs have a type.
So this little blurb from Adam makes me think immediately, who do the Chiefs have that is sufficient in pass protection and also is fast and good at catching the ball? One of their most important players offensively from a year ago, Jerick McKinnon. Like, that's kind of his thing right now. McKinnon's very good in pass protection. He's definitely a stud in that regard. Don't really know how good Prince is at that yet. But this, to me, sounds like, hey, maybe we've got our next Jerick McKinnon if everything works out the way we hope. That we've got a fast pass-catching back. He can return some kicks or punts. He can, factor in, be the third down back or third back in the rotation, whatever. Now, I don't think this means that they're going to suddenly cut Jerick McKinnon. I think they want to keep him around, and he was dang good last year. I'm totally fine with having a little redundancy there. But are the Chiefs going to keep 4 running backs and not what they've been doing, 3 running backs and a fullback? There's no Sherman. There's no, what the hell was his name? Burton. That was his name. There's none of that this year. You're going to be using your tight ends a little bit more in a fullback role, more of an H-back. Specifically, Noah Gray is going to get some snaps there. I imagine Bell would. Travis Kelce might even get some snaps in that kind of role. Are the Chiefs keeping 4 running backs, though? Because Pacheco's not going anywhere. I think McKinnon is sticking around since they re-signed him again. You've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the final year of his deal, and then you've got Deneric Prince, who is apparently lighting it up more than anyone else on the roster at camp so far. I think it makes sense, but when you consider you're keeping 4 tight ends in all likelihood, you might have a major numbers crunch in your receiver room because there's so much competition there. You've got to fill out the rest of the offense. I just don't know that there's going to be a spot for 4 running backs, which to me says it's either Prince or it's Edwards-Helaire who's on the way out.
And it would make a lot more sense if it were Clyde, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that the Chiefs keeping Edwards-Helaire around, giving him a chance to fight for a roster spot, maybe giving himself a chance to be somebody a team acquires in a trade, maybe feature him in the preseason and try and do right by him, because it's nothing that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has done wrong, right? Like, by all accounts, he's been a good teammate. He's worked hard. You haven't heard a whole lot negative coming from him or coming from One Arrowhead Drive about him. So I don't think that any of his lack of production or the disappointment that his career as a first-round pick has been to this point is necessarily all his fault. I mean, there have been some injuries that have caught up with him a little bit. So the Chiefs might be trying to do right by him and maybe let him put some stuff on film in the preseason, maybe get him onto another roster. But if they really like Deneric Prince, then he will make the team. Like, if he's going to be their kick return guy, and it would make a lot of sense to have somebody in that role like Prince. I don't think they don't want to use, are hesitant to use, their starters in that role. And I think they'd like to go away from Isaiah Pacheco in that role.
Oh, yeah. I think Pacheco would like to go away from him in that role.
Yeah. So I do. I feel like he's going to make the team over Clyde. And I do feel like it's just a matter of time before Edwards-Helaire is either traded or ultimately released on the cut down date when they get down to 53. And with the Chiefs hoping that he puts some good stuff on film for his sake.
And I think just realistically, look at those 2 skill sets. Which one fits the Chiefs better? A guy who is making almost no money, who can return kicks, has incredible speed, and has decent hands in the receiving game with up in the air pass blocking, or a guy who is not nearly as explosive as he appeared in college and has never taken off as a pass catcher and already isn't the best pass blocker on the roster. It's hard to see that working out long-term. And I understand why it made sense coming out of LSU and that season he had when they won the national title, but Clyde just doesn't fit this roster and he doesn't really fit this offense. And
I don't think so.
I know he's only under contract for 1 more year, so it's not like this is a long-term play with him anyway, but it just doesn't make sense, I think. It's sort of like what we've talked about with Hopkins. Yeah, he's a good player, but does it actually make sense with this Chiefs team? I don't think so. I just don't think Clyde's skill set makes a whole lot of sense for the Kansas City Chiefs. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon, Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com is going to stop on by for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. He'll join us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. We've also got today's What Is Wrong With You? 2 great stories going head-to-head to try to take down Slim Jim in the pants. And Travis Kelce had an interview with Vanity Fair. Very revealing, very in-depth, a lot of good stuff. We'll get to that interview with Travis Kelce to lead off the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk.
What if your body...
hour, getting started on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you up until 6 o'clock today. Taking you into some 580 Sports Talk overtime, Royals pregame, and then Royals first pitch at 7:10 tonight as they take on the Cleveland Guardians. If you want to be a part of the show, hit us up on the text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Or you can hop into the comment section on YouTube. Go find our channel. It's called Sports on 580 WIBW. We're live streaming the show today and every single day. You can hang out, watch us, comment. It's all free and easy to use on YouTube. Again, our channel called Sports on 580 WIBW. Here in this 4 o'clock hour, we'll talk some Travis Kelce in just a moment. A fascinating interview he did with Vanity Fair. We've got today's What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply, as the Slim Jim in the Pants tries to keep... amazingly, that's not a euphemism, by the way. If you haven't heard What Is Wrong With You the last 2 days, not a euphemism. We've got 2 new stories trying to take that one down. And then we've got Tim Fitzgerald, our usual Wednesday staple at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. He'll join us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline for today's edition of the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. And again, your texts and your YouTube comments coming up throughout the show this afternoon and throughout the rest of the day. This was a fascinating interview that Kelce did with Vanity Fair, and I've always appreciated, especially in the last couple of years, how open Kelce is willing to be. And I think it has helped that he and his brother have become multimedia superstars in the last few months, even beyond the fact that one is one of the best centers to ever play the game and the other is one of the best tight ends to ever play the game, and they're brothers and very tight.
I got to shout Travis Kelce out for finally acknowledging what we have long known to be true, that podcasting is very hard.
Yes.
In fact, it's the hardest job in the world.
I've always said this, that being a first responder or, working in a hospital, no. Podcasting. You try to come up with content during the off season.
The long hours in the content mills are very taxing.
The countless amount of time, the calculable. I screwed up that word again. I did that last week.
Breaking rocks all day at the Take Farm.
The impossible to number amount of time that we spend staring at Twitter to try to find takes for the day. It's incredibly difficult. As a veteran of the podcasting and sports talk game, it's a brutal life, but someone's got to do it.
And I'm just glad that Travis Kelce acknowledges that. I'm glad that an NFL player acknowledges that actually what we do is harder work.
On a serious note, though, I do love that every single podcast interview or TV show he goes on or sit down on camera or anything, he reps his alma mater. He wears Cincinnati stuff everywhere he goes. He wears it all the time on the video version of New Heights. The interview he did with Pardon My Take last week, he was wearing a Cincinnati hat. It's just always repping Cincinnati, which I like. I appreciate that from him a lot. But he sits down and does this interview with Vanity Fair. And there's a bunch of nuggets in here that I think are truly, truly fascinating. One that I think he would absolutely excel at and would be tremendous at. He wants to host a game show. He 100%. That is, I think, where he could thrive, is being able to make some of the quips, make people feel comfortable, make some jokes. He would be an incredible game show host. I'd rather have him host. Well, I don't know. I don't know if Wheel of Fortune really fits his skills quite as much. I don't know if that's a great fit.
You'd rather it be him or Seacrest?
I'd rather just never see Seacrest. It's not 2004 anymore. I don't need this much Ryan Seacrest in my life.
People genuinely offended by Seacrest taking over Wheel of Fortune.
It's weird. Pat Sajak was a radio DJ before he had that job.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in his celebrity grew from there. Everyone knows who Ryan Seacrest is. Let someone else do this. You have every job. Every single job belongs to Ryan Seacrest.
He's on TV all the time.
So yeah, even if it's not the perfect fit for Travis Kelce's humor, I would still rather see him hosting Wheel of Fortune than Ryan Seacrest.
Here's my hot Wheel of Fortune take. It's a bad show. It's a bad game show.
That's correct. No, that's a good take. I don't like Wheel of Fortune.
Not a fan.
I've shared before when we were talking about game shows a couple weeks ago that was my family growing up. ate dinner at 6:30. Well, when my dad was home, because he's very regimented, more so than my mom is. Dinner time was 6:30. And you know what's on in Chicago at 6:30 every weeknight? And on Saturdays, I think. Wheel of Fortune. So it was always Wheel of Fortune during dinner time, followed by like a rerun of Chopped after that. And I just got sick of it. And I got sick of the dumb people, and I got sick of the puzzles, and I just done with it.
I'll say this. The bloopers on Wheel of Fortune are probably better than they are on maybe short of Family Feud. They are better than they are in any other game show. Like every now and again, I will think about the poor University of Indiana student who thought on the spot dice spin was a thing. And I will laugh until I convulse. On the spot dice spin. Mythological hero Aeschylus.
It's not quite to the Family Feud level of trying to go viral all the time, but yes, that's true. The outtakes are very funny. I don't need it in my life. I'll do the crossword puzzle.
I'm over Wheel, unless Travis Kelce hosts Wheel of Fortune. Then I'm in.
I would have a little more intrigue in that. Doesn't seem like a Jeopardy guy to me. Don't think I would see Travis Kelce hosting Jeopardy.
I do think it would be very funny. Apparently, another takeaway from this Vanity Fair article is that Travis Kelce says, "You already know a lot." Like that is, if he has a catchphrase, it is "You already know," and that would be a very funny thing to say. Hear the host of Jeopardy say after a correct answer. What are the Balkans? Oh, you already know.
For 1,200, if you get this right. What is the Colossus of Rhodes? Oh, you already know. All right, never mind. I'm in on it. Certainly get Mayim Bialik out of my face. Get Travis Kelce in.
We got some more hateration on a Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah!
From the 785 in the text line. Patty S is low key a condescending jerk.
Ah!
Yes. He has no time for those contestants. Like that's the big difference, right? Like Trebek had a fondness for his the contestants on Jeopardy. Like he seemed to like them, or at the very minimum appreciate the breadth and depth of their knowledge that brought them to television. Pat Sajak like openly despised everybody who ended up on his show.
Which, like, you do the same thing for 40 years, I guess, like, that probably comes more easily, but still. All right, so Travis Kelce, next host of Wheel of Fortune. I'm already on there. Hollywood Squares, Vance suggested. That show hasn't been on in a while. I liked that show a lot as a kid when Tom Bergeron hosted it. Kelce would be great on that.
Mark in with YouTube comments with a virtual boo to me on my Wheel of Fortune take.
Yes, Mark booed me the other week when I said I preferred Jeopardy to Wheel of Fortune. I just, too much of it. Too much of it for too much of my life. Anyway, so along with the game show part of this, there is other interesting stuff from Travis Kelce in this article. The one that is now going viral across social media because people have been misinterpreting the quote is about how much money he makes and how much he has been paid over the course of his career relative to other players, including relative to his former teammate, Tyreek Hill. So the writing here from Vanity Fair goes like this. Obviously, no one should weep for Kelce, who's earned nearly $65 million in his playing career. He isn't crying poor either, but admits that his associates bristle over his salaries. Quote, "My managers and agents love to tell me how underpaid I am. Anytime I talk about wanting more money, they're just like, why don't you go to the Chiefs and ask them?" The Chiefs, of course, are constrained by the NFL salary cap, and they've parted ways with other key players who have gone on to make more money elsewhere, like all-pro wide receiver Tyreek Hill, who we know about his gigantic contract with the Dolphins. Kelce goes on to say, "When I saw Tyreek go and get 30 a year, in the back of my head, I was like, man, that's 2 to 3 times what I'm making right now. I'm like, the free market looks fun until you go somewhere and you don't win. I love winning. I love the situation I'm in." He said it does cross his mind how you see much more money you could be making. And yeah, it hits you in the gut a little bit, makes you think you're being taken advantage of, but then adds, I don't know if I really pressed the gas, if I would get what I'm quote unquote worth, but I know I enjoy coming to that building every single day. And I got to be honest with you, that is something that a lot of people in life do not have, and certainly not still making the amount of money that Travis Kelce is making. Right. And there's value to that. There's value to, yeah, I could make more elsewhere. I could, have nicer things if I worked elsewhere or moved elsewhere or whatever. But I get to hang out with the guy who's become one of my best friends in Patrick Mahomes. I love Andy Reid. My boss is incredible. I'm tight with him. They have taken care of me for a long time, even when I was acting a fool earlier in my career. And this has become home. He does so much work in the community as well. I understand what he's talking about. Like, man, wouldn't it get nice to get paid a few million more or like 10 million more than what I'm making right here on a fairly team-friendly deal? But there's real value to they care about me, I care about them, and I'm happy.
Yeah, I think it's Dick Vitale who has said repeatedly, like, one of his great pieces of advice he gives is don't mess with happy. Like, if you're in a good spot, if you're in a spot that allows you to flourish and that makes you happy to walk in the door every day, then the grass is not going to be greener on the other side of that. Now, I do think that Travis Kelce probably is underpaid for the value that he has brought to the Chiefs. Like, nobody would bat an eye if instead of being paid like one of the top tight ends in the game, he were paid like one of the top wide receivers in the game. Like, if he hit the market tomorrow, let's say, theoretically speaking, and some team was prepared to offer him, now we're later on in his career than Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams when they got like big wide receiver money. But if he got money that was more comparable, if not years, money that was more comparable to what those guys have gotten, instead of money that's comparable to what the best tight ends in the league have gotten, I don't think anybody would blink. I don't think anybody would bat an eye. So I certainly understand if there are people in Travis Kelce's ear saying, instead of being paid like an elite tight end, you should be being paid like an elite wide receiver, because essentially that's what he's produced like over the last handful of years. And I'm sure there's a part of Travis Kelce that has thought, boy, it might be nice to have a few more dollars, because I don't care how much money you make. More always sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Ask anybody. Ask the richest person you know, whoever that may be. Hey, would you like more? Would you like more? Not need. Would you like more? And everybody would say yes. So I don't blame, like, this is getting aggregated all over the place as Travis Kelce has told his agents that he's underpaid and wants more money. No, that's not what I'm hearing in these quotes at all. This is a guy who understands his worth and understands that he has probably sacrificed a little bit of earning potential for the sake of being in a situation that has allowed him to do some other things. Enjoy where he works, enjoy his coworkers, and win. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you want to make the most money. That's a nice thing to do. You know what else is a nice thing to do? Win 2 Super Bowls and play in a third. And there are dozens of his contemporaries who are not going to experience that. They may walk away with more money than he walks away from in his NFL career. But are they going to walk away with more rings? Are they going to walk away with a better relationship with their quarterback? Like, Mahomes says in this Vanity Fair piece that, like, he has developed the kind of friendship where, like, the families hang out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's that kind of closeness, like a brotherhood with him and Travis Kelce. Like, you want to toss that all away to make a few more million a year and go catch passes from a guy you don't have telepathy with?
And
like,
there is probably value too in the, like, Travis Kelce being who he is has value outside of football, like advertisements or acting or terrible reaction. Winning all the time, there's even more value to that. I mean, he's everywhere. He is all over the place. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity after football because, he says in here that he wants to play out his current contract, that he's not going to retire before that. He could get through, 2025 is when his deal ends. So he's got 3 more years under contract with the Chiefs. By the time that season ends, he will be 36 years old. Not a lot of 36 and up tight ends in the NFL.
No, and the ones who did play that long are like the all-time greats. Like Shannon Sharp played into his mid-30s. Tony Gonzalez obviously played into his mid-30s.
Yeah.
Antonio Gates played a long time. So
yeah.
Nobody's saying that Kelce can't. But he also does seem like he's got some things on his mind for his post-football life. And how many guys, particularly a sport like football, that is so physically demanding, that is as potentially the toll that it can take on somebody. How many guys just play forever because it's the only thing they can think to do?
Yeah.
Like, that is not the case for Travis Kelce.
No.
Travis Kelce, well, he may not have an exact idea of what it is he wants to do. He knows there are a lot of things he can do.
And people will want him to come and do their thing. Like, hey, be in this movie, either as an actor or in a cameo role, or host our game show or whatever. Like, people are going to want him to be there. And the thing, like, he could retire today and be a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right now, if he retired, he's got 2 Super Bowl rings. He's on the all 2010s all-decade team, which is almost a guarantee you get into the Hall of Fame. 4-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time second-team All-Pro. He's been to the Pro Bowl 8 years in a row.
Yeah, he waltzes into Canton if he decides tomorrow he doesn't want to play football.
Yeah.
His legacy is secure, and everything from here just kind of adds to it. But yeah, he's going to have the kind of like post-football life where if he's worried about missing out on some money, he's going to get a chance to recoup it on the back end, I have a feeling. Whether that's as a host of an ABC primetime game show or whatever it ends up being. Like, he's going to be somebody who is in our homes and a presence in like American pop culture in a way that, like, it's hard to think of that many football players who that's true for. Like,
I can think of one off the top of my head who you cannot escape. He might be here. Peyton Manning might like be outside because he's just everywhere all the time.
Is that an open mic?
But like,
does that say on air?
Yeah. Like, that's the kind of guy we're talking about, though. Like, they're going to be in everything, both in football and outside of football. Peyton Manning is in a Bush's Baked Beans commercial now. It looks like he'd rather be anywhere but holding a pile of beans. Man, he looks at that thing like he's about to throw up.
I wish I could do those commercials, to hang out with the talking dog.
Yeah,
roll that beautiful bean footage. Yeah, he's everywhere. Like Alex Karras did movies.
Yeah,
Rosie Greer did a bunch of things. Think of another example. Maybe you don't want to emulate so much. Who was in the Naked Gun movies, for example?
Yes. Would prefer to not be the juice.
Right.
But otherwise, like,
good poster these days. Whatever happened between the Hertz commercials and that is none of our business.
I do think, though, that there is something to be said for you've got the next 30 years of your life taken care of in other spaces, and you'll have business opportunities and all that. Whereas, and I'm not trying to put down Tyreek Hill, but like, when Tyreek Hill hangs it up, you think NBC is going to be banging down his door to come do Saturday Night Live? No. You think that Fox is going to be like, we got to get that guy in a booth? No.
Right.
For myriad reasons. And Tyreek is also,
there's always
circumstances.
There's always the podcast.
Yeah, it needed to be said. Even that, Travis Kelce's winning the podcast thing in a freaking live show that the commissioner showed up to. Like, he's everywhere. He's one of the biggest deals in the sport, and I don't know that it would quite work out the same way if he went somewhere else.
But yeah, I to go back to this part of it, like, we've already seen, like, Dov Kleiman, who's a pretty well followed NFL reporter, was aggregating the quotes from this story for his own story and tweeting about it. And the tweet essentially makes it sound like there's a greed angle to all of this from Travis Kelce. And I don't think that's what that is. I think what you have is a player who understands that, again, he may have made some sacrifices to be as fulfilled professionally as he is. And one of those sacrifices might have been that he didn't make as much money as he should have. But yeah, he'll have plenty of opportunities, ample opportunities. We're going to be, if you're inclined to be sick of Travis Kelce, you'll be sick of Travis Kelce at some point. But if you enjoy his presence, there's going to be a lot of it to enjoy, even when he's done catching touchdown passes from Patrick Mahomes.
He also said he thinks somewhere between 50 and 80, which is a huge range. 50 and 80% of the league uses marijuana for some purpose.
That might be low.
Yeah, it might be. And
particularly with as many former players now who extol the benefits of it as like something to ease chronic pain.
It's probably saved Jim McMahon's life. It is very scary to think about what may have happened to the punky QB, and he'll tell you that had he not started ingesting marijuana.
Who was the big lineman for the Ravens? Eugene Monroe.
Yeah.
Who has really advocated for...
I think Calvin Johnson owns a dispensary.
Yeah.
Or some sort of marijuana brand. Like, if you are someone who is anti any drugs and marijuana, whatever, so be it. But I think it is proven that for a lot of players, it is very helpful to ease pain, if nothing else. And frankly, if these guys are going to go out there and run into each other at full speed for entertainment purposes, I've got no problem if they want to light up or eat an edible or whatever so they're not in massive pain for their entire lives. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I know he attributes it to going back and watching film and working on his footwork. As soon as the NFL stopped testing for marijuana and punishing for marijuana positive tests, Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs. If you know anything about what he's been into the last couple of years, there are some dots to be connected here.
Mm-hmm.
If it works, it works. I don't care what you do in your own time. Just show up on Sunday. I don't care.
There are harmful drugs, much more harmful drugs that the NFL still does and should, frankly, test for. But they've got a lot more lenient about the green leaf, and that is something that Travis Kelce kind of talked about. How players beat the one test that you get for it every year, and how easy it is to beat it. And he sounds like somebody who's speaking from experience.
And
Good for him.
That's fine. Yeah, man puts his body through a lot. That's fine.
Yeah.
All good. No beef with me. Let's get to a timeout here on 580 Sports Talk. Today's What Is Wrong With You is up next, and Tim Fitzgerald will join us later on here in this 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Oh, you know what the hell is right. It's time for What Is Wrong With You on 580 Sports Talk. We do it at this time every single weekday, and this will be our final one of the month of June. We've got a short show tomorrow, and then Friday we will find our monthly champion for June. So in our final weekly battle, the Slim Jim in the Pants is our current winner for the week. A gentleman who was riding his bike without a light on it after 10 o'clock. Cops pulled him over, saw a bulge in his pants. It was a bunch of Slim Jims. No, that's not a euphemism. He literally had extra large Slim Jims tucked into his pants. But then they asked to check his backpack, and that's where they found meth, among many other knickknacks and odds and ends in there. That's the Slim Jim in the Top City Metal cuts the metal you need to your specifications, saving your time, your money, and your material. Never settle when it comes to your metal with Top City Metal Supply. My story for today is going to take us to Indianapolis, Indiana, where we meet Amber Baron, who was returning home from work back in May at 4 a.m., had the late shift. She was in Indianapolis. Now, she went inside to feed her pets, and they'd been alone for a long time, and then went back outside to grab her mail. She was approached at that point while she was getting her mail by Damian Boyce, who then robbed her. Boyce took $100 in cash from tips that she had received at work. But then Boyce said, hey, do you have a boyfriend? And while pointing a gun at Baron, then asked, could you add me as a friend on Facebook and I'll pay you back with the money that I just took? Gave her his name and his Facebook profile for this woman, Baron, to then add him on the platform. They then exchanged multiple messages on Facebook Messenger. Boyce wrote to her, quote, look, just know I'm going to pay you back. I know it's a bleeped up way to meet, but damn, you was too pretty to rob. Baron responded by saying, I believe you, man. I can tell you're sweet. Just get rough. I know that.
Times just get rough.
I know that. Boyce then responded again and said, I feel like a total bleep. I swear I got you. What's your Cash App tag? For real, I'm shifty. We had to meet up on the terms. Come chill with me. I swear I'm not that type of timing. That sentence is a little all over the place.
I'm not on that type of timing.
Baron went on to tell Boyce that she does indeed have a boyfriend and wished him the best. While all this was happening, the Indianapolis Police Department was investigating the robbery, and Boyce has since been arrested. He was charged with armed robbery, and carrying a handgun as a felon last Wednesday.
Don't talk about your crimes on the internet.
Unfortunately, he is also in trouble for a different armed robbery where he was accused of shooting two people and then hitting another in the back of the head with a brick.
They must not have been as attractive as Ms. Baron.
Apparently not. Authorities say the incident happened after an argument between Boyce and the victims. He then barricaded himself before a SWAT team arrived at the scene.
So I had to find a picture of Ms. Baron. You know, the Daily Mail, the scuzzy English tabloid would have us covered on that front. And they do, in fact, have a screenshot of the WRTV news story of Ms. Baron. And she is a nice-looking young woman. She's got the fang bite piercings in her upper lip.
Yeah.
Which...
not quite for me.
Yeah, it's not a look I would personally rock myself. But
no,
not a piercing guy.
No, me really either. So yeah, she was too pretty to rob, and he still robbed her, sent her money back, and then got arrested.
Incredible.
Yeah,
really good story.
This dude loves armed robbery.
Gonna be hard to top, but I do love this one. We go to Italy and we meet Cinzia Paolina De Leo, who was fired from her teaching job in 2017.
Oh,
because she had been employed for 24 years and had been absent from work for 20 years.
Oh.
She reappeared for 4 months and triggered complaints, leading to her dismissal. Italy's highest court confirmed the dismissal after a lengthy legal battle, saying her absences showed a, quote, permanent and absolute ineptitude. Wow, what are we talking about here? The Cleveland Browns?
Ha!
Ms. DeLeo has condemned the ruling and vowed to reconstruct the truth. The secondary school teacher who specializes in history and philosophy said she had documents to prove her story, but told Republican newspaper, sorry, but right now I'm at the beach.
Hey, priorities, man.
So Ms. DeLeo was reinstated from her job previously in 2018 after a ruling by a judge in Venice, but the education ministry appealed against the decision and it was reversed by the Supreme Court last week. The ministry argued that the teacher had kept out of the classroom for 20 out of her 24 years of service. Imagine being employed somewhere for 24 years and for 20 of those years just not showing up.
I think at some point you'd get fired. How do you not?
For the first 10 years, she was completely absent, and the absences in the other 14 years were attributed to sickness, personal, or family reasons. The court heard that in a 4-month period in 2015 when she did teach, students complained of her lack of preparedness, her failure to bring textbooks, and her random and improvised way of grading. An inspection found she was unprepared and inattentive, and students refused to take part in her classes as she was distracted by her phone. Her 2017 dismissal turned into a legal battle, going through an appeal and counter appeal before finally arriving at the top court. Her defense of freedom of teaching was rejected by the court, which argued it was the teacher's responsibility to guarantee students' right to study.
She now describes herself as a freelance journalist, which is very funny.
That's why she's at the beach. She's investigating.
Doing
some hard-hitting reporting.
How much sunscreen she needs to avoid getting burned. I just don't know how she didn't get fired before this. 10 years.
10 years just not showing up with no excuse.
How do you last 10 weeks showing up with no excuse? I don't even
10 days.
Yeah, what is wrong with you here is the school system and the Ministry of Education.
Yeah, they must be real laid back in Italy.
Apparently. Man, I do remember, this is not nearly the same thing. I remember when I was overseas studying abroad, and like journalism school at KU, we were told every class, like daily almost, plagiarism is going to get you kicked out. Do not plagiarize. Journalists do not plagiarize. Yada, yada, yada. I go over there. Someone asked about it. It was like, hey, is there a penalty for plagiarism? They're like, oh, we frown on it. Like, oh, all right.
Boy,
sick.
I'll bet.
Cool. I'm don't tell me that. Why would you admit to that? Anyway, apparently things are much more lax overseas. Oh, man, this is tough today. Who you got?
I still got to go with the too pretty to rob.
The thing is, he did rob her.
Yes.
And then it was like, oh, well, actually, I want to date you, so I'll send you the money back, but add me on Facebook first. No one has used, like, add me on Facebook as a pickup since 2010.
For real, he's shifty. He's not on that type of time.
Apparently not.
Normally the type of guy to rob people, except that he is, because he's got another armed robbery charge. People should be lying.
I mean, he hit them with a brick. That is a personal attack.
No, they should have been more attractive, clearly.
Yeah, that's what I got, too. Does that beat Slim Jim in the pants?
I think so.
I think it does. You're too pretty to rob. Add me on Facebook. That is our new winner, Under the Wire, winning the week in What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply. Let's get to a break, and let's get to Tim Fitzgerald after this on 580 Sports Talk.
Angie's List is now
sticky.
You win that dang day.
I'm not a big fan of sticky.
What a great day to be a Wildcat.
It's a big Kansas State victory.
Tim Fitzgerald is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, and he joins us every Wednesday at this time on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. For all the best coverage of all things K-State, head to GoPowerCat.com, and you can also find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Fitz, it's not just you and I this week. Dan is back. I can report to you, tan a little bit, Speedo, no.
No Speedo, Fitz.
No.
Sorry to disappoint.
Okay, well, that's all right. You don't get everything you want in life.
Are you a Speedo guy? I mean, you're headed to the beach soon. Are you a Speedo guy?
No, I'm not a Speedo guy. I don't have Dan's body. I can't pull that off.
Well, congrats to Dan for having a Speedo body, I suppose. Hey, Fitz, I wanted to ask you, before we get to stuff going on the field with the Cats right now, the latest edition of the Life of Fitz podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts, by the by. Pretty special guest for anyone who went to K-State for, I don't even know how long Mr. Bosco worked at K-State. Many decades, I know that much. Pat Bosco, the newest guest on the Life of Fitz podcast.
Yeah, it was really good. It's one of my favorite conversations I've had in my 4 seasons. Yeah, Pat Bosco came as a junior in college, a transfer student in 1969, and he never left. He became student body president, sort of working for the administration, and worked his way up to vice president of the university in charge of student life, and retired in 2019. So he had a 50-year run at K-State.
Wow.
And everyone around K-State knows Pat Bosco. He's got a plaza there outside the Union named after him. He's really fun to talk to. He's quite the character.
I imagine there were, for lack of a better phrase, Fitz, he's seen some stuff, some 4-letter S word. I imagine he's seen some things in those 50 years.
Yeah. He worked under 5 different presidents, but he made his name known during the Weefald administration. He was the first person handpicked by Weefald to be on his kind of inner circle and put him in charge of getting enrollment numbers up. And boy, howdy did he do it. He got K-State to an all-time high when he was in charge of that stuff.
Incredible stuff. And again, that interview with Pat Bosco can be checked out on the Life of Fitz podcast feed. That can be found wherever you get your podcasts, and also linked on the homepage of GoPowerCat.com. Football-wise, that's where I wanted to start things off this week on the field, Fitz. The recruiting weekends are done for the month of June. We have entered the recruiting dead period. The on-campus visits are done with for now. Overall, how do you feel like this week, or this month, I should say, went for K-State? A lot of momentum with a lot of local and national prospects. Did it feel like an overwhelmingly positive last few weeks, mostly good with maybe a few misses? How would you sort of assess how these last few weeks have gone?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I think but the NIL shuffled things. I mean, you can't always quite grasp, where everyone's going until they have all their NIL, I don't want to say offers, but you know what I mean. All that is on the table, so it's getting a little bit more difficult to understand. And but I think we could be hearing some good news from K-State. There's some players out there that we really still don't know where they sit, but I think we'll find out, and you can find out at GoPowerCat.
Our guest is Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. He joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline, as he does every Wednesday. We call it the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up, talking all things K-State. Check out Fitz and the gang's great work, again, at GoPowerCat.com. Follow Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Speaking of some potential good news, where Kansas State has had an edge over their in-state Big 12 rival in recent years is with regards to in-state recruiting. They're trying to maintain that edge. One of the best players in the area, in the state, announcing his commitment tomorrow. That's Caden Massey out of Linden.
Yeah.
How good should K-State feel about the chances of landing a Kansas player?
Well, we don't know. I mean, he's playing this one close to the best. It's K-State, Nebraska, it sounds like, unless he's playing really close to the best and there's someone we don't know about. We don't know where he's going, so it'll be kind of a surprise for everyone. because again, I think NIL offers are on the table, and when you don't know what K-State offered, let alone Nebraska, it gets a little hard to predict. But he's been pretty coy about it, and we'll find out tomorrow along with everyone else.
There is a crystal ball prediction for another Kansas kid, Michael Boganowski, out of Junction City. Not sure when it is that he's going to announce his destination. He may be a ways out from doing that, but Kansas State feel like they're in pretty good position for the Junction City Blue Jay.
Yeah, I mean, they're, again, NIL, and you got Oklahoma in the same space working on him. I think he's a priority. I think K-State knows they really want him. He's out of Junction City. He's a football mind. He's a great linebacker. Ryan Wallace, our recruiting editor, put in a crystal ball at kind of medium certainty on that one. So that means he thinks he's going to K-State, but his level of certainty is not as high as honestly I would want. But it's interesting that he feels like it's a strong K-State lean right now, and that would be a big get for K-State. This isn't a real deep year in the state of Kansas, but the top players are pretty special, and both of those guys. If K-State wins both of those battles, that says a lot about the program's headed.
I'll tell you this much, Fitz, and I know we've shared this on the show talking about recruiting before. We've gotten to see Michael Boganowski play a few times, Junction City in the Centennial League with a lot of the schools here in Topeka. We've gotten to see him play a few times during his high school career. That kid is a stud. And whether he goes to K-State or OU, or I know there was some interest from the Southeast as well, he's going to be a really dang good college football player.
Yeah, I feel like, he's a player that because of his interest, the schools with which are showing, a great deal of interest, I feel like this would be an enormous victory for Kansas State. On the heels of Avery Johnson the year before, to be able to get another top player that has national interest out of the state of Kansas would be good, because that hasn't always happened for K-State. They've often seen these top players bleed off and go other places. So, trying to set this as a regular occurrence would be big for the football program.
Got a few more questions for Tim Fitzgerald. He's the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, which is part of the 24/7 Sports Network. That's where you can find all the best coverage of all things Wildcats athletics. You can also find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. This is our Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz, we're just 2 weeks away from the start of Big 12 Media Days. Kind of hard to believe it is already that soon. The guests, or the featured players, I suppose, if you will, for every school in the Big 12 were announced earlier today. Will Howard, Cooper Beebe, Daniel Green, and Kobe Savage. That is the quartet going for K-State. Who is the most exciting one from that group? That's not a very fair question, I think. Who are you most excited to talk to from that group before who's going down to Arlington?
Probably Kobe Savage, coming off that injury. And I think people are sleeping on him, not realizing how valuable he'd be. But in this context, you can see what the coaches think of him. I mean, you've got possibly the best quarterback in the Big 12, at least in my book, one of the top two. Probably the best offensive lineman in the Big 12, if not the nation. You got a linebacker who had a injury-riddled season last year, still had a great year, but come back to do some damage. And then Kobe Savage, who transferred in, played most of the season, then got hurt, and never, kind of reached his peak last season. But I think they realized the kid could be really good. So I love this group. It's exactly who I hope they'd bring. It's a good mix of personalities and stories. So I think we're going to have fun covering this group down in Arlington, although K-State goes to the second day, which doesn't work well for me. Nobody checks with me, guys. Nobody said, Fitz, when would you like K-State to go? And I could handpick the time, but I'll do whatever everyone else wants, I guess. I don't get my way all the time.
The downside of day two is the old Trapper beef jerky stand might be picked over by the time you get there.
Well, I'll be there the first day, but we like to have our big team on the first day so we can do the work, and then if we work later that night, it doesn't affect us. But this now we've got what, a 9 a.m. press conference with Coach Kleiman, and we've got to drive back from Arlington that night. So it's just not fair to me, Tim Fitzgerald, and we all need to look out for Tim Fitzgerald. It's how the world should work.
This is Tim Fitzgerald, in case you missed that, joining us here on the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up here on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz, quick pivot to basketball as K-State continues to do some work or do some recruiting in the transfer portal. West Virginia had a couple of players hit the portal after the dismissal of Bob Huggins, and a couple of them have visits to Kansas State scheduled. Guard Joe Toussaint and big man Muhammad Waggy. What is the fit for either of those players for Kansas State?
Really solid addition. Are they, frontline headliner guys? No, but that's not really their point now. They want guys that'll be contributors. You look back at last year, and for all the good that the headliners brought them, and Keontae and Marquise, you had some guys that kind of flew under the radar that emerged to be really effective players, like David Gasson, like Cam Carter, Desi Sills, and even Naquan Tomlin. So those are the kind of guys that are left in the portal right now that K-State's in on. I think they feel good about both of them. A little interesting thing, though, the Manhattan airport is closed all summer as they completely redo the runway. Apparently it was like 20 years overdue for runway work. So I'm in favor, as someone who flies out of that airport, to fix the damn runway. But it has affected recruiting. You can't fly kids in. So they're having to go to Kansas City old school and you go pick them up. But I think they feel good on both of those. They have two openings. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think both guys are from New York City. So they were probably conscious of, what happened with K-State last year and how much New York kind of embraced the Little Apple Manhattan. We'll see if that plays a role in this.
Toussaint in particular, Fitz, I think is a really interesting fit, and I think he could be a starter at the one and have him and Perry be, dual ball handlers working the way up the court. But I think he also would make a lot of sense if he was kind of the lead piece of the secondary unit, come in, play 20 minutes a game, he can score you, 8 to 10 off the bench. I think he'd be really useful in that role too. If he is seriously considering K-State and if he was possibly to come to Manhattan, do you see him as more of a six man or someone who Jerome Tang could actually work into that starting lineup?
Probably a sixth man. As I assess it, I think this is an ideal replacement for Desi Sills to come in, although he might come in and play the point and, allow other guys to move away from that. But yeah, and I think from what I'm hearing, Cam Carter's going to be a more advanced player here in U2 at K-State, and Naquan Tomlin also. So I think they're picking up really interesting pieces if they can get these guys.
Tim Fitzgerald is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, which is part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Go be a VIP over there if you're not already. You get all the early access. You get all of the inside information you can't find anywhere else about all things Wildcats. You can also find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz, and he joins us every Wednesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz, as always, my friend, we appreciate the time. Enjoy the upcoming weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, boys. 50% off sale ends tonight. If you're thinking about subbing to Go Paracat, go take care of that.
You do it. I am a subscriber at 24/7. It is absolutely worth it. Fitz, appreciate the heads up, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Fitz.
That is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. I would not tell you, by the way, because I know I do that when we talk to Michael and we talk to Fitz, like, hey, go subscribe over at 24/7. I would not tell you to subscribe to things that I did not already think were good deals. Definitely a good deal. Go subscribe. It is absolutely worth it, especially if you're going to get it for 50% off. I'm fascinated by that Caden Massey recruitment, the Linden product, because I was just reading through the Go PowerCat write-ups from Ryan Wallace before we talked to Fitz, and sounds like Nebraska is super confident. Sounds like K-State has a lot of confidence as well. That's a big get. He's a good player. He's a really good player. So wherever he ends up, definitely getting a winner down from Linden, just south of us here in the capital city. That does it for the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. 1 hour to go on the show today, along with your texts and your comments on the YouTube feed. We're going to get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines coming up next hour. Dan's going to talk a little bit about Shohei Ohtani and how freaking incredible it is that we get to watch him play baseball. And of course, we will preview tonight's Royals versus Guardians game. Game 2 of the series, Logan Allen versus Austin Cox. Cox finally getting a start for the boys in blue. Love that. Pre-game is set for 6:30. First pitch at 7:10. We'll have a little 580 Sports Talk overtime coming your way to lead off the 6 o'clock hour before we send you to the Royals Radio Network. We'll get to all that and more coming up after the news back here on 580 Sports Talk.
Are you in the
on this Wednesday, June 28th. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for being a part of 580 Sports Talk. Wouldn't be the same without you here, so thank you so much for hanging out. We're still taking your texts and your YouTube comments throughout the rest of the show. Hit us up either on the text line, 785-272-9429, or watch us on YouTube. That's right, watch us. We're live streaming the show video-wise on YouTube, where our channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Just search Sports on 580 on YouTube, and that is where you will be able to find us. You can subscribe, check out the YouTube feed, and hang out in the comment section with the rest of the commentariat today. In this final hour of the program, we'll get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We've got some Major League Baseball talk to get to, including Shohei Ohtani is beyond superlative. Whatever you want to say about how good he is probably underselling it. And then we'll preview Guardians-Royals, Game 2 of their series. Austin Cox getting to start for the Royals tonight. Hopefully it goes as well as, well, his season up until this point in mostly relief roles have worked out for Austin Cox. So that's coming up a little bit later on this hour, along with your comments on YouTube and your texts as well. Plenty of headlines to get to, so let's jump right on into our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today. The biggest one in our state, some postseason changes for high school athletics. Keisha announcing today that they are making some changes to the football and soccer and wrestling postseasons. Baseball regionals have been updated as well. Let's start with the high school football. So, as we know, up until this point, state championship Saturday has been held at all sorts of different cities. They've changed the number of classes with the addition of Class 6A, elimination of one half of 4A. But every class gets its own city, essentially. 4A has been here in Topeka for quite a while. We were out in Hayes for 1A this past year, 2A in Salina, etc. Well, starting in 2024, so 2 football seasons from now, state football will be held at 3 locations with 3 games taking place at each site. The locations will be determined at a later date, but we know that November 29th and 30th of 2024 will host the state championship games. They'll play 1 game on Friday and then 2 games on Saturday at each location. I imagine that'll probably be 7 o'clock Friday night, I would think.
Yeah, do a night game and then a doubleheader the next day.
Yeah, or maybe they do it earlier, do 6 o'clock. I don't know what it'll look like exactly, but that's what they're planning to do. 1 game on Friday, 2 games on Saturday. I love this. I think this is great. I think this is a step in the right direction. I understand why some locations were fans of the current system or soon to be past system because more dollars being spent in more cities, more coverage of the state. I understand that. But to me, and this is largely because I grew up in a state, and I know you did too, where championships are contested at 1 site. Like in Illinois, state football, all 8 classes are at 1 site. They will play 3 or 4 games on Friday, 3 or 4 games on Saturday, all at Soldier Field, or all at Memorial Stadium in Champaign, or all at, wherever, Hancock Stadium at Illinois State, somewhere. They play all the games there. They just go one after the other. And it's a celebration of the season, of the athletes, of the sport, and it's awesome. And you don't get that same thing when everything starts at 1 o'clock and everything is over by 4. It's not quite that same weekend-long, day-long celebration. So I love this for football. I don't know exactly how they're going to pair these up. I think one logical way would be to have 6-5 4A in one place, 3-2 1A in one place, and then the 8-man and 6-man divisions all in one place.
That feels very likely.
I imagine that's what will happen. Who goes on Friday, who plays on Saturday? Again, that is still all up in the air. I love this though. I think this is phenomenal.
Yeah, this is a great step because you have an opportunity now to maybe get into some bigger venues and make it feel like a bigger deal and have bigger crowds, because like those Saturdays in particular, you're going to have a doubleheader. I mean, people, who go to the morning game might stick around for the night game. People who are playing or their teams are playing the night game, well, they might want to go to that early game and see that one. And maybe they're already in town Friday night. May as well go to the Friday game too. Yep. So you get more of a crowd, more of an atmosphere that way. I just think this is a great move. Like, I have covered high school sports in a few different states, and I consider, in my experience, and I haven't been to all 50 states and know how they do everything in all 50 states, but I consider Nebraska the gold standard.
Okay.
I think the way Nebraska does their championships and promotes their championships and televises them statewide on NET, which is essentially basically if it's on PBS. Like, no matter where you live, they broadcast them on the PBS.
So cool.
On the PBS. Yeah, it's great. And they're all in the same spot. Like, basketball championship Saturday in Lincoln. Volleyball championship Saturday in Grand Island. Football championships are spread out, but they are all at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, where Nebraska plays their games. Even the 8-man games. They do the 8-man games on one day, and they do the 8-man title game there. So that's always been, of all of the states that I've been to, that's been the state that I think has done the best job of staging their championship events, promoting their championship events, and getting big crowds to their championship events. So I have long advocated for Kansas to look into doing the same, because I think there is, as in Nebraska, a great deal of desire for that kind of staging of championship events, to have them all in the same place, to have, I think it grows interest. I think it will grow crowds. I think it's great for the players. I think it's great for the fans. I think it's great for the coaches, the parents. I think this is the way to go. You put them in a place that will make it feel like a bigger event, like maybe Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Now, I know you got to work around the Big 12. And you got to work around Kansas State, because maybe Kansas State wants to play at home in their final weekend of the regular season. But, okay, maybe it's not Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Maybe it's the Booth in Lawrence.
So, to your point about maybe people stick around for, they come to the early game, but why not? We're already here. We might as well go to the late game. I think that's a huge advantage of doing this. You're going to get better crowds when you do this. I really think that's true. And look, like, if you're truly going to make this, a celebration of this season of football, if I was out in, if I was in Manhattan and I was there to see my team play at 1:00, and I say, you know what? Let's go grab food and come back, and we'll watch the game at 5 or 6 or whenever they play the second game, and make a whole day out of it. I think that makes a lot of logical sense. All in for that. I would love if this was a setup that would guarantee they could play at the Booth and they could play at the Bill every year. And I know you have to work around the Big 12, because the Big 12 is still playing at that time. You've got your final week of the season. I know it would be difficult to do, but I would love for there to be a way for one or the other to always be open. And you could make this happen if the Big 12 stops scheduling like morons, and you just played KU and K-State that weekend every year, like every other conference in America. So one would always be open.
Yeah.
Even if 4, 5, 6A just alternated yearly between Manhattan and Lawrence, would anyone be upset about that? I can't imagine it.
No.
Hell, all the 6A programs are in Johnson County anyway.
And you still, like, even if you're shut out from the Big 12 venues, you still have some classic state-of-the-art Division II venues you can stage these games at. Carney Smith Stadium in Pittsburgh is a great stadium. Yager Stadium is a nice setup. Welch Stadium in Emporia has hosted state championship games for years. The Hayes Stadium is a really nice setup where you can get a good crowd, a good atmosphere for those games. So, yeah, I'm excited to see this. I am very happy that Keisha is moving in this direction, and it feels like just the start, because they're also going to do all of the state soccer championship games at the same site on the same day.
Beautiful.
And it feels like this is all a prelude towards maybe a single site basketball state championship or a single site wrestling state championship. I'm telling you right now, you put all 6 classes of wrestling, boys and girls, put them at Intrust Bank Arena in Wichita.
Sell out.
You will get 15,000 people to Intrust Bank Arena. You will. I promise you, Keisha, you will do it, because I've seen those kinds of crowds come out for state wrestling in Colorado at the Pepsi Center, Ball Arena now. But they put all the classes and all the mats down, and they pick the biggest venue you've got, because wrestling people will turn out for their sport. Wrestling fans, wrestling wrestlers, the families, the student section, like they'll turn out, they will fill it up. It will be an awesome atmosphere. Do it. Do it. I love that we're starting to move in this direction. I love it, love it, love it. It's the best thing Keisha's done since I've been covering Keisha athletics. I really feel that way.
Yep.
And I'm not somebody who's down on Keisha. Like, I know there are some people who kind of, I haven't agreed with everything they've ever done. I haven't disagreed with everything they've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not me walking some kind of party line here, but this is my favorite thing that Keisha has done since I've started covering Kansas high school athletics in 2013. I think it's outstanding, and can't wait to see the crowds and the enthusiasm for this in 2 years.
Yeah, and I would also like to commend Keisha for doing this, because I think this is going to end up being good for everyone. And, we've talked to Pistol how many times over the years about how a lot of times the Activities Association, for reasons you may or may not agree with, is slow to act on things. And you've got a lot of different types of people, a lot of different types of student bodies and communities and whatnot that are pulling you in different directions all over our state. Why things do get done, don't get done, take a while, etc. This is a great move, and I am 100% behind it for football, for soccer. Made some adjustments to wrestling as well. In the future, they will discuss basketball and volleyball in a different way. All-day volleyball is awesome. Put them all anywhere. Put them all at Horish. Put them all, in Manhattan, anywhere. It will look so good. So I commend Keisha for this, and I think it's a step in the right direction for sure.
All right, first 580 Sports Talk headline for me. We talked a little bit about this with Tim Fitzgerald to GoPowerCat.com, but the 14 members of the Big 12 announced today who they are taking to Big 12 football media days, which will take place July 12th through the 13th at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. By the way, if you're familiar with 580's sports programming and you wonder, will we have a presence at Big 12 Football Media Day? You bet your bippy we will. We're going to be there. We're going to have all kinds of audio. It's during the All-Star break, so we're really going to blow it out with our coverage, because there ain't nothing else to talk about those 2 days but Big 12 football. So we're going to do it big like we always do on the 580 WIBW family of sports talk programs. But both Kansas and Kansas State announced who they would be bringing. KU will speak on day one of the event. They will bring their quarterback, Jalen Daniels, their running back, Devin Neal. They will also bring the safety, Kenny Logan, and Rich Miller, the linebacker, as well. For Kansas State, who will speak on day two, quarterback Will Howard, offensive lineman Cooper Beebe, linebacker Deuce Green, and safety Kobe Savage will be present at AT&T Stadium. Look forward to speaking with them and eating lots of Old Trapper beef jerky.
Shout out to the Big 12 for scheduling KU and K-State specifically for us, specifically for a radio station that covers both KU and K-State. So we have content on both days. Huge fan of that. I'm excited. I admittedly don't know the K-State guys super well, but Jalen Daniels, I know I can speak to the KU guys much better. Jalen Daniels, awesome personality. We all know that. Devin Neal, great guy to talk to. I know you've spoken to him before. Same with Kenny Logan. Excited to see Rich Miller again. That's a really good group for KU. And, Will Howard and the rest of that group will be able to hold down their own for K-State too. I'm excited. This is really when we get to move into college football and into the real preparation for football season. We were saying earlier, we got our Phil Steele magazines today, the gospel of, preseason college football coverage. It's going to be fun. It's going to be weird this year, too. Well, not weird, but it's going to be a very unique setup this year. It's the last year for OU in Texas. It is the first year for Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, and Houston. I bet it's going to be a crazy crowd down there. I think there's going to be a better national presence this year than there was last year. So, no, I'm excited. It's going to be fun. And again, appreciate the Big 12 putting KU and K-State on different days.
I appreciate them doing it during All-Star Week.
Yeah.
It's the Wednesday and the Thursday. So it's the 2 days after the Major League Baseball All-Star game, when there is nothing else happening in sports. When I tell you we're going to do wall-to-wall Big 12 audio, I'm not kidding. We might play Kalani Sitake's entire press conference on Wednesday.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, there's good personalities with the Big 12 coaches.
Yeah, we need to get to know the new guys, right? Like, There's some real interest in hearing from Kalani Sitake and Scott Satterfield. And, well, I guess Dana Holgerson's not new, but he's been in the conference. But
I will request, though, since you and Jake are going to be there, I will put in my request now. If you're going to get anyone outside of Coach Leipold and Coach Kleiman, You got to get Holgo because there's a real chance the later in the day you get Dana, like we might have to have the dumb button turned on. Like he might get real R-rated. You got to get Gus Malzahn. I'm going to put in a request that you guys talk to Gus Malzahn.
I'd love to speak to Gus.
I think that would be a blast.
Gus, you're back in big-time college football. Your thoughts?
Gus, what do you think about Manhattan, Kansas?
Gus, how does it feel to be at a university where the boosters are not completely psychotic?
Yeah. What is it like to not have someone breathing down your neck literally at all times? Do you feel at all bad for Brian Harsin? Or did that situation actually just make you feel really good about yourself? No, that's going to be a blast. That's just 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
KU is going to speak at Media Day in 2 weeks. That is incredible. So excited for that. Next headline for me. How about some international basketball news for you? Victor Wembanyama, he is going to play in the Summer League. There was a little wondering about, is the number one pick in this year's draft, the unicorn, the true unicorn, Victor Wembanyama, going to play in the Summer League? Indeed, he is going to. He is not going to play in the first 2 games at the California Classic Summer League action, but his first NBA American basketball experience will be at the Las Vegas Summer League, the NBA 2K24 Summer League that takes place in 2023. Got that? Okay, good. So that is very exciting. That is going to begin in just a week? It comes up very soon.
It does.
So yeah, Victor Wembanyama is going to be playing for the U.S. coming up here in the near future. He is skipping the FIBA World Cup this summer. Is not going to play with Team France for that. He is going to focus solely on his now American career. Likely does not change anything for next year's Olympics. I imagine he is going to play for Team France in that, but he is not going to play for them this summer, which is fairly significant. France is a pretty good basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
He is obviously the most important piece of that. They are not going to have him for this year. Additionally, have you seen what's been going on with Paolo Banchero?
I have not.
So Paolo Banchero, last year's number 1 pick, former Duke Blue Devil.
Rookie of the year, I believe.
Yes. If you didn't hear anything from him all year, it's because he played for the Orlando Magic, where attention goes to die, essentially. Really good rookie season. Looks like he's going to be a really good NBA player. He has dual American and Italian citizenship. If you couldn't tell, he was Italian by his name, Paolo Banchero.
Right.
He has chosen to play for Team USA this summer. This has bothered many dignitaries in Italy who were under the belief that he was for sure going to play for Team Italy. And there has now been something of a war of words where it was, you promised you were going to play for us. Well, I didn't promise you I was going to play for you, and I would rather play for Team USA, which is, I think, interesting. If he went and played for Team Italy, is Davide Moretti on that roster? Maybe he is. I don't know. He would be the focal point. I mean, he would be the best player on Team Italy. Instead, he's going to play for Team USA and will win more. I would probably pick that option too. And he gets to play with all of his American friends.
Yeah.
I would also probably pick that option.
Got that going for him, which is nice. Another headline for me here, our 5A Sports Talk headlines. The NCAA's Division I Council has proposed changes to the transfer period windows that would reduce the total number of days that student athletes can enter the transfer portal from 60 down to 30. As it stands now, there's a transfer window in college football that starts the day after the college football playoff teams are announced, which is December 4th last year. And that transfer window is open from 45 days. And then there's another 15-day transfer window open from April 15th to April 30th. That's for football. For winter sports, there's a 60-day window that begins with a given sports championship selection, so Selection Sunday. And there is a 45-day window for spring sports that begins with that sports championship selection as well. So the Division I Council has proposed basically cutting that in half, going from 60 days to jump into the portal down to 30 days. I think this is in response to the fact that guys are taking big time advantage of the portal. The council says in their release that they have data from the past year that indicates most student athletes enter at the beginning of the transfer window, but this is the number. The numbers are staggering. 2,224 Division I football players entered the transfer portal this past winter.
That's a lot.
Over 2,200. And over 1,300 of them entered in the spring. So all told, you're talking about over 3,500 Division I football players entered the transfer portal.
Wow.
In the 60-day window. If they had only a 30-day window, maybe fewer of them would make the jump.
Yeah.
There are lots of different reasons, and I'm all for the freedom of movement, but it does, I think, put a lot of strain on the recruiting process, and it's not good for like incoming freshmen to not know if, oh, wait, this guy jumped in the transfer portal day 59. He might take my spot at my school. I am in favor of a reduced transfer portal. I'm not in favor of any restrictions on who can jump in and why and how often or beyond what already exists. But as far as like a shortened transfer portal window, I think that might be good for everybody. I would hear the arguments for that.
I can see that. I can understand that. I just ran some really rough math. That's around 27% of Division I football players. Well, does that include FCS or is that just FBS?
Just says Division I.
Okay.
So I would assume that would include both.
Okay. Well, if that's FBS only, that's 27% of the players. If it includes FCS, it's a much smaller number. But still, even if you halved that, well, it'd be less than half. I mean, you're still looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 or 15% of all college football players at the Division I level in the transfer portal. And not all those guys are going to end up finding homes. I mean, there's a new crop of high school freshmen or high school seniors every single year, junior college kids every single year who get pumped into the system. That's really fascinating. That's kind of amazing. I could go either way. I mean, I see the one argument that, yeah, it makes things easier and more, easier to manage for everybody, every party involved. But with a bigger window, with more time to enter, you are giving more opportunities for players to have freedom of movement, which I'm also in favor of. I can see the pros or cons of either one. Did you also see, this is going to get me to my last headline of the day, the new rules about punishment for gambling in college sports?
I have seen these.
So I got to go find Nicole Auerbach had tweeted these out. Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic. The NCAA has new guidelines for punishments for players who get caught gambling on sports or other types of gambling. Here is how it breaks down. If you are caught gambling on your team or teams at your school, you risk permanent loss of college eligibility in all sports. This would apply to student athletes who wager on their own games or other sports at their own schools, or knowingly providing information to individuals involved in betting activities. So don't give out injury information, don't give out the playbook, and don't gamble on our games. If a student athlete wagers on their own sport at another school, they have to go through a gambling education course and they will lose 50% of 1 year of eligibility. So if, a player at KU bet on a K-State game in football, they would lose 6 games of the season and have to go through this training. If they bet on a KU game, they might lose their eligibility permanently for the rest of their college career. Then for any other sort of gambling infraction, it all just depends on how much money you wagered.
Which is extremely funny to me.
Like if you get caught betting on professional sports, but it's for less than $200, you just have to do an education course. It's like having to go do like traffic school, essentially. $200 to $500, you lose 10% of your eligibility for the year. $500 to $800, 20% of your eligibility. And you'll never believe this, over $800, 30% of your eligibility.
Hey, if you're a college student and you got that kind of money,
good for you.
Yeah, that's more money than I had when I was a college student, laying around to be my, hanging around leisure money.
But like if you're a guy who's never going to play and you guys know that they're never going to play, and are you really going to be like turned away from putting $100 down in a game with that kind of penalty? I don't think so. And not that I'm demanding stricter penalties. I'm just saying for some guys, they're going to get in trouble and they have no excuse and no one to blame but themselves. But if you're like the 4th string long snapper, I say, whatever. I'm not getting in anyway. Like, I'm going to lose 3 games. Okay, whatever. Might not mean anything. Any other headlines for you?
No, we'll wrap it there.
And with that, that'll finish up our 580 Sports Talk headlines. Dan has got you the rest of the way. We've got some Major League Baseball talk coming up, including a preview of Royals Guardians tonight. Then more coming up the rest of the way on 580 Sports Talk.
.34 on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero flying it solo the rest of the way with you, closing out this 5 o'clock hour. And then we got a little overtime for you as well before we get to the Royals Radio Network at the bottom of the 6 o'clock hour. Earlier today on Mic'd Up, Jake LeBon, Fulton Caster spoke with the one, the only Rick Peterson. Pistol going into the Shawnee County Sports Hall of Fame tonight. And the guys on Mic'd Up interviewed all four of tonight's honorees and interviewed Rick Peterson in studio this afternoon. We're going to re-rack that interview for you in case you missed it. And we'll hear from the great one, Pistol, Rick Peterson, coming up in overtime. But we got about 25 minutes before that. If you are still hanging out, hit us up on the text line, 785-272-9429. Jump into the YouTube comments. I am going to evangelize a little bit about Shohei Ohtani as if he needs me to evangelize for him. Every time I look at what he does, what he is doing, what he's in the process of doing, I feel like I turn into one of those wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube guys, just trying to get your attention and say, if you're not paying attention to this, you need to be. And by you, I don't necessarily mean you, the listener, because if you're listening to this program, assume you're the kind of sports fan who's pretty aware of the havoc that Shohei Ohtani is wrecking across the American League to this point for an Angels team that, if the season ended today, would be in the postseason for the first time in Ohtani's career. No, I turn into the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube guy about Ohtani when it comes to, I feel like everything he does should lead the national news. Like Lester Holt should be telling people about Shohei Ohtani every single night. When you turn on the Today Show, this is what Hoda and whoever else they got up there with Hoda, Al Roker still doing his thing, I think. They should all be talking about Shohei Ohtani. There should be dedicated daily news coverage. It should be on the front of every newspaper, in the front of every magazine, what Shohei Ohtani is doing to baseball. Because there is not anything like him in the sports world right now. Last night, against the Chicago White Sox, Shohei Ohtani got the start, pitched 6 1/3 innings before he left the game with a fingernail issue. In those 6 1/3 innings, he allowed just 1 run on 4 hits, walked 2, struck out 10, had 17 swings and misses against him in the course of his 102 pitches. That was good enough to earn him the win, although Carlos Estevez did make it dodgy, giving up 4 consecutive hits in the 9th inning before closing the door, getting out of a bases loaded, nobody out jam to preserve a 4-2 Angels win. 2 of those runs, Ohtani was responsible. Had a home run in the 1st inning and a home run in the 7th inning as well. So Ohtani now on the year has a 302 earned run average and a 304 batting average, an OPS that's clear of 1,000. On the major league tables, Shohei Ohtani leads baseball, not the American League, baseball in slugging percentage, in OPS, in total bases, in home runs with 28, and in RBI with 64. He is also 3rd in baseball in strikeouts as a pitcher, and believe leads the league in strikeouts per 9. No, he leads the American League in strikeouts per 9. 2nd in baseball in that category. The only parallel I can draw here, and this is not mine, I saw this floating around Twitter. We kind of brushed up against this when Brendan and I were talking earlier in the show. This is sort of like if Patrick Mahomes were also Micah Parsons. Like if the best quarterback in football were also a havoc-creating edge rusher who was a double-digit sack guy who made like a big defensive play every single game. Like imagine that. Imagine if Patrick Mahomes next year went out and threw for 5,000 yards and 45 touchdowns like he always does, and then also had like a dozen sacks. Just picture it. You can't, right? That's what Shohei Ohtani is doing to Major League Baseball. The only thing I can think to say about it, it feels like hyperbole, but I swear it's not. We are lucky to be alive to see this. We are lucky as sports fans, as consumers of sport, to be alive in the age of Shohei Ohtani. There's only been one other guy in the history of his sport, which again goes back to the 1860s, who's been remotely like this. And of course, you know who I'm talking about. Back in 1918, George Herman Babe Ruth led the American League in home runs, in slugging percentage, and in OPS. He also that year finished in the top 10 in the American League in earned run average. That's pretty good. But Babe Ruth was already starting to be phased out as a pitcher at that point in his career. He was just a spot pitcher at that point for the 1918 Boston Red Sox, who famously won the World Series. He only pitched in 20 games that season, which was less than half of the number of games he had pitched in the prior year, because the Red Sox had already determined, yeah, he's pretty good on the mound. He's pretty good up there. We can use him up there, but he's way better relative to his peers up at the plate, and we got to get him more at bats. And of course, back then, that meant him playing the field. It's a little different. For the Ruth Ohtani connection is not a straight line or comparison is not truly a straight line, because if Babe Ruth were going to pitch and hit, he had to play the field. There was no DH, and there was no Ohtani rule that allows Shohei to stay in games as the DH, even if he is removed as the day's starting pitcher. But still, Babe Ruth led the league in home runs, was top 10 in the league in earned run average in 1918. And after that, he was done essentially, as a pitcher. From that point forward, he didn't do a whole lot of pitching. Shohei Ohtani takes his turn every 5th day and is one of the 3 best pitchers in baseball, 5 best pitchers in baseball. I don't know how you want to rank them, but I know if your list doesn't have Shohei Ohtani on it, it's a bad list. And while he is pitching, but also on the days in which he is not pitching, he right now is the best hitter in baseball too. And it's the same guy. I was having a conversation. Those who know me know I used to do, I previously worked out in Western Kansas and co-hosted the sports talk show there. My good pal Ross Volkmer out in Goodland still hosts the show, just now it's a solo act instead of having me as his millstone around his neck. But every so often, every week, I go on the air and with Ross and I talk to him and I talk to the good people of Northwest Kansas. And we were talking about Shohei Ohtani today and discussing why is there only one Shohei Ohtani? Because if you had a chance to watch the College World Series, the Men's College World Series, you saw Florida's Jack Caglione, who had a monster year for the national runners-up, hit 31 home runs as their 3-hole hitter, and also possesses a 99-mile-an-hour fastball from the left side. That's pretty cool, right? Like, that's a pretty rare skill set. Why can he not be the next Shohei Ohtani? Why can he not get to a major league organization who would be able to develop him both as a hitter and as a pitcher and get him to the major leagues as both a hitter and a pitcher? Because there have been guys who've tried to go 2 ways. You know, there have been good hitting pitchers. There have been, in recent memory, some guys who tried to be 2-way players. Jared Walsh was one for the Angels for a little bit. Eventually gave up pitching, made an all-star game as an offensive player. Never really clicked for Brooks Kieschnick. He was just kind of a guy. In college, he was a great 2-way player at Texas. That's a name from the late 90s, early 2000s. He gave being a 2-way player a real shot. Never really panned out. He was more of a late, last resort type reliever than a real impactful pitcher anyhow, and he wasn't very impactful offensively. So why hasn't American baseball turned out a Shohei Ohtani? And I think it comes back to a point we make a lot when we talk about youth sports and high school sports. Well, where it seems like the further along you go, the more specialized you get. You know, it's not everybody, but many times you'll see a high school athlete pick one sport, or even before they get to high school, decide I'm all in on whatever the sport is. I'm all in on basketball, or I'm all in on football, or I'm all in on baseball. I'm all in on volleyball, whatever it is. And they quit the other sport and they spend all their time, spring, summer, winter, fall, all of their energy and all of their training and all of their focus is on this one sport. And I think then in baseball specifically, and I think I'm sure this happens in other sports too, you get the specialized training to be one thing. You get the pitching lessons. You get the specialized training to be a pitcher, or you get the hitting lessons. And you train to be an outfielder, you train to be a shortstop, or whatever it is. And you don't get the chance to develop both skills next to each other. And even if you do, even if you are one of those rare amateur players that is dominant as a pitcher and as an offensive player, eventually you get to the pros, you get drafted by a team or signed to a team, and it's just not an experiment that teams are willing to allow guys to go through. Like Hunter Green is an example of this. Pitches for the Cincinnati Reds. He is currently on the injured list, but he is a talented young arm. He was the 2nd overall pick in the 2017 draft. Big physical right-hander. And when he was drafted, I remember there was a lot of talk about him being a 2-way player, potentially. Well, obviously that hasn't happened. He has yet to take a major league at bat, and it seems likely that he never will. When he was drafted, they sent him to rookie ball in 2017, and he gave it a run at doing both. He did. He got 30 plate appearances, and he pitched 4 1/3 innings. and he wasn't very good, although a 17-year-old in rookie ball, one of the youngest guys in the league. He hit 233 with no walks and 2 doubles and a triple, and he had an ERA over 12 in 4 1/3 innings and 3 starts. The next year in A ball, they said, yeah, you're a pitcher now. He did have a chance to swing the bat a little bit, but only as a pitcher in AAA Louisville in 2021. But those 20 plate appearances will probably be the last of Hunter Green's professional career. We didn't get a long enough sample size to see if he could have really hacked it as both. The Reds just kind of gave up on it. Said, that's not what we're going to do with this guy. Which, again, I don't know that that's all the fault of the teams that can't develop or won't develop or don't know how to develop 2 different skill sets at once, or if it just stands as a monument, once again, to how unique and how special Shohei Ohtani is. And I'll tell you what, when he's on TV, run, don't walk to the front of your set to watch this. Because we're lucky to be alive in the age of Shohei Ohtani. We'll take a quick break, come back, preview Royals baseball tonight on the other side of this break. You're listening to 580 Sports Talk.
Attention, Kansas parents and guardians. Are you looking
.550 here on 580 Sports Talk, coming down the home stretch of today's program. Royals baseball coming up tonight. Game 2 of 3 between the Royals and the Guardians. Guardians with a 9th inning comeback to beat the Royals 2-1 last night. Austin Cox on the bump for the Royals. He will have behind him a defensive outfield that does not include Edward Olivares, which is good. Eddie O DHing tonight. Michael Garcia in the cleanup spot. That is interesting. Logan Allen is the starter for the Guardians. 7:10 first pitch, 6:30 pregame. We'll have a little 580 Sports Talk overtime in before that. A couple of comments I want to get to real quick from the YouTube comments, youtube.com/@sportson580. Mark says Ohtani's a good bet to win a Cy Young. Just my guess. Yeah, mine too. He'd be my guess too, Mark. I think he's also going to win MVP because if you're the best pitcher and the best hitter, that's an MVP to me. Tell you what, he is remarkable. From the 785 on the text line, as I mentioned, Ohtani belongs on your best pitchers list, no matter how long it is or how short it might be. Question, who's on my list of the top 5 pitchers in Major League Baseball? I'm so glad you asked. That's a fun question. Ohtani's on it, obviously. And then if I get 4 more and I get to fill out my starting pitching rotation to go take on the Monstars or whoever it is that I'm facing in this scenario where I get all 5 of these guys. Spencer Strider for the Braves, unbelievable what he's done in basically just 1 year as a big league starter. He's striking out 14 guys per 9 as a starter. I don't know how long he's going to be able to do it. I got questions about his longevity as a 2-pitch pitcher. He may burn out before he has a chance to fade away. But, boy, right now he is electric. Garrett Cole, the veteran, having a great year again for the Yankees. Maybe putting together low-key a Hall of Fame resume. It'll be interesting to see how that develops for Garrett Cole in the back end of his career. I go Shane McClanahan, Tampa Bay, and then I get one more spot. You know, it's hard not to say Clayton Kershaw here. Just kind of an emeritus role. And he's having another terrific year. Almost no-hit the Rockies last night. And again, it's the Rockies, not a huge deal, but still pitching great into his later years. I'm between Kershaw and Zach Gallen of the Diamondbacks. Somebody from the NL West for my top 5. So you get a top 6 instead on the text line. That's a little reward for asking such a good question. Appreciate it. Kevin Gosman, my guy, fellow Grandview High School alumni, would probably just miss. He's having a terrific year for Toronto. Only one of the only American League pitcher with more strikeouts right now than Shohei Ohtani has. And again, Shohei Ohtani has 28 more home runs and 64 more RBI than Kevin Gosman does. Just an unbelievable player. And probably the best athlete going, and maybe the best, unless you were alive to see Babe Ruth play, which if you are, boy, big shout out to you. But Shohei Ohtani might be the best athlete you've ever seen. One final break. We'll come back. We'll walk it off after this here with the final word on 580 Sports Talk.
Attention, Kansas parents and guardians. Are you
favor. In conclusion, we better wrap it up.
Wrapping up, walking off this edition of 580 Sports Talk for this Wednesday. Got a little overtime coming up. Going to hear from the great Rick Peterson from his interview on Mic'd Up earlier this afternoon on overtime before we get you to Royals baseball. Final word for me for today. Don't be fooled by the Twitter aggregators that want to make a bigger deal out of Travis Kelce's comments in Vanity Fair about his salary than need to be made a big deal. I have really lost the train of thought on that sentence. I'm going to be honest with you. Let me try again. Don't listen to the people, the aggregators, trying to make a bigger deal out of what Travis Kelce said in that Vanity Fair piece about how much he's been paid or feeling underpaid or wishing he had made more money in his NFL career. Read the entire article. You can read it for free at vanityfair.com, pretty sure. It's worth a read. If you're a Travis Kelce fan, if you're a Chiefs fan, it's a great read. It's very interesting, very illuminating. But his comments suggest a player who is content with the knowledge that maybe he did sacrifice some things financially, but he did it for the pursuit of winning and for the pursuit of happiness in his professional life. And maybe there are some of us who can relate to having made similar sacrifices in our lives. Travis Kelce's done that, and what it's gotten him is one of the great careers for a tight end in the history of the National Football League. And that's not too bad. Money can't buy that. I can tell you that right now. Brendan and I will be back for a show tomorrow. We'll be on after Royals baseball, afternoon Royals baseball tomorrow. We'll be on after that until 6 o'clock. Until then, for Brendan, I'm Dan. This is 580 Sports Talk.